Hey everybody, it's Boardman21, and today's build is going to be the VoidKnight, and we're going to be using some Anomaly with Devouring Orb, Abyssal Echoes, Lunge, and Vengeance, and basically we're going for as much damage reduction as possible. We had to use one of the three skills that you can use to get mana back whenever you use it, which is Vengeance, and then it's a complete dot build. We will be using a couple of uniques. The weapon is kind of mandatory. You can do the same thing, but the dot damage will be a lot less if you do a crafted staff or if you use a different weapon that doesn't have as high poison chance. However, overall, the tankiness is just pretty crazy on the build. I think the Forge Guard will be better, but for VoidKnight, we made it over 150 waves, which is pretty good for the new arena. We died to a fire golem. We could have taken our time and, not stood right in the flames when it did its little circle of death, but we decided to try and tank through it, and that didn't work out at all. The defensive mechanics on this is you're going to be dodging, and then also every time you use Vengeance, you're automatically healed for 25 life. On top of that, since you're leeching damage and there's a lot of dot damage going everywhere, and I mean a lot, you're going to constantly basically be refilling your life and have it at full almost all the time, unless for some reason you're not hitting enemies. The other weird thing that you have to do on this build is even when you're not around enemies, you still have to be using Vengeance to keep your mana up, otherwise you will run out rather quickly. But with that, let's go ahead and get into the skills. For skills, we are going to be using Anomaly, Devouring Orb, Lunge, Abyssal Echoes, and a Vengeance. For Anomaly, we're using this for Leech and for attack speed, and the way we're going to have it being used is 1 point in Void Touched, which will give every time rot on everything, and we have Immediacy, 1 point in Time Bubble, 5 points in Temporal Mastery to make it last longer, 1 point in Lingering Memory for the effects that you get from it to last for 2 seconds if it does disappear, but we have 100% uptime on it. We have Time Lord so that it will now be cast on us and it follows us as we move. This does increase the mana cost, but that's fine. 2 points in Manipulation for the increased attack and cast speed, 1 point in Swift Fist for the increased cooldown recovery, 4 points in Time Eater for 2% of leech of all damage you do, and it's doubled for Void, and we do a lot of Void damage. And then 3 points in Void Maul to increase that health leech by 150%. For Devouring Orb, Devouring Orb is going to be comparative in damage to Abyssal Echoes. Abyssal Echoes probably does more, but on single target damage, Devouring Orb wins. Abyssal Echoes will wipe out, your trash mobs very easily, very quickly, but Devouring Orb is made for the single target. It stacks the poison quite well. And we have 2 points in Void Adept, 1 point in Cataclysm, and 4 points in the Orb Master to reduce that cooldown by 120%, which means we're casting it every 1.8 seconds, which is a very fast cooldown on it. And then we have Hollow Orb for the 50% increased duration, which basically takes away the 40% minus that you had. So you still get just over 10 seconds. I think you get 11 seconds on each orb. Also, as a VoidKnight, there's a chance to echo when you cast it. So you usually end up with like 7 or 8 of them, and that's a lot of orbs. And then we have 1 point in Abyssal Emission and 7 points in Dark Torrent to make those Abyssal Orbs cast so much more frequently, and each one of them not only explodes and does an AoE, but their hits will apply the poison from your weapon, which we are using the Plague Bearer. And then we have 1 point in Dark Moon so that it follows us and orbits us, 1 point in Abyssal Rush for some move speed, 1 point in Cosmic Impact, and 1 point in Sightless Star for that mana efficiency. If you can do this without the point there, you don't mind always basically being low on mana. You don't have to do these points, and you can just put the rest into casting more often, or even reducing the cooldown even further. Or you can go for the global increased damage, although it's not that big of a perk. I'd rather have the mana efficiency. For Lunge, the only reason we're using this is since you're basically always holding down Vengeance and attacking you don't really want to stop. It means you're not really trying to run, so we use Lunge in order to get to the next group of targets. Unless there's an AoE or something you need to dodge, I tend to just sit there and keep attacking with Vengeance, even if it's the thin air, until Lunge, points me to the next target and takes me there. For that, we have 4 points of Into the Fray, 3 points into Tactician for reduced cooldown, 3 points on Forge on, 1 point so we're immune while lunging, 1 point in Initiative, 1 point in Avenger's Charge, 3 points in Deadly Aim, 1 point in Wound Revel, and 3 points in Reckless Lunge. Now, Abyssal Echoes, this is the one that's going to do a major amount of the damage because of the way that it, 1, makes enemies take more damage, 1, increases your damage over time, and 2, it's just proccing so often and chaining between the enemies. So we have 2 points in Echomancer, 1 point in Temporal Echo, so that when you cast it, it now casts twice, 4 points in Abyssal Cadence for 4 more recasts, so every time you cast it, you're actually getting 6 casts out of it. 2 points in Distance Echo for some mana efficiency. This also increases the delay between the recasts, so those 6 are a little bit farther apart. But the big thing is this global damage over time, which I believe that they've changed it to not stack. It now says last 4 seconds, and I haven't double checked. It used to stack, it might not now. But the one that does stack is your 3 points in Temporal Reaving, which makes enemies take 30% more damage over time. If you put the 1 point in Sequel of Decay, that damage over time is reduced by 50%, so it's only 15%, but it can stack. And 15 times the 6 casts that you're doing means that they're going to be taking 90% more damage over time. And that's if you cast it once. If you cast it twice, then that's 12, and so on and so forth, however fast you can cast it. Now, when we put 1 point in Mental Echoes, it's now an instant cast with a 4-second cooldown. Then we put some points into the increased cooldown recovery, which actually knocks us down to a 1.6 cooldown, which means we can actually cast it quite often. And then 2 points into the mana efficiency on Abyssal Remains so that we can knock the cost down. Our cost is only 32 mana. That seems like a lot, and casting every 1.6 seconds on top of casting Abyssal Orbs does take a lot of mana, but due to the fact that every time you use Vengeance, you get 10 mana, you can kind of keep up with it, and the faster your attack speed is, the more likely you are to always have full mana. And then we have, of course, a Vengeance. The most important thing on this would be the attack speed. So we have 1 point in Double Riposte, 8 points in Rapid Strikes for that 48% increased attack speed. Since we are using the Plague Bear Staff, our attack speed is actually quite low, but you could do much faster if you were to do a crafted one-hand. Maybe the Void Dagger that's actually made for the Sentinel would be a good option for this. I haven't found that dagger yet, so I can't use it, but the attack speed would be absolutely ridiculous. Plus, it has positive void damage on it, which would help. 4 points in Dark Duelist for that global increased damage, 1 point in Executioner, and then 6 points in Bolster for that extra 36% less damage taken. For passives, we have 20 points in the base Sentinel class, we have 8 points in Fearless, 5 points in Gladiator, 2 points in Armor Clad, and 5 points in Time and Faith. And this Time and Faith is the most important. Anytime that you directly use Rive, Vengeance, or Smite, you get 25 health and 10 mana. Now we're using Vengeance, which means every time we use it, we're healing ourselves for 25 health, and we're getting 10 mana back, which is huge. It solved all of the mana problems with this build. We have 0 points in Paladin, 18 points in Forge Guard, with 5 points in Battle Hardened, 5 points in Prime Fighter, and 8 points in Steel Aegis. And then 75 points in VoidKnight. We have 5 points in Temporal Corruption, 8 points in Void Bolts, and yes, you're going to say some of these are completely useless because we were doing Smite before this, but we didn't want to respect the whole upper part of the tree. You can definitely change these up and you will get some better ones. You can do things with the melee attack, such as Woe or Rock Grip. Down here at the bottom, I would probably change these to these 8 points from Volblitz. I would change it into Void Blades instead of Void Bolts, just because it's melee damage now. You probably don't need Void Corruption either, but I'm just going to say the way we have it set up here. 1 point there, 10 points in Future Strikes, 8 points in Doom Knight, 5 points in Echoing Strikes, 10 points in Time Legion, 1 point in Avatar of Regret, 8 points in Eternal Form, and 5 points in both Void Aegis and Essence of the End, with 1 point in Void Flux. Now remember, we ran 159 waves with the way it is as now, which means that if you were to change this up and do more damage and set it up, for an actual melee build, you could probably go farther. And now, most importantly, for the items. So for idols, we're running 4 of these mana efficiency with void spells. You can get up to 25% on them. The one we have has increased armor and increased mana efficiency with void spells. And then the Plague Bearer Staff obviously comes with a huge amount of chance to poison on hit. We are still using Urzel's Pride, which, you know, you probably get enough mana regen now at this point. Without it, you could probably take it off and craft it, but I didn't feel like crafting one. And then for everything else, we have, you know, our Glancing Blow, we have Fight and Critical Strike Avoidance on everything. We are running an Oracle Amulet for the decreased damage over time, and then on our jewelry we're running Set Dodge and Set Elemental Protection. Our belt just has increased damage over time on top of the Glancing Blow. The one thing, our relic has protective or armor protections while channeling. You don't need that. That just happened to be the best one that we had, so we put it on this character. And we are running some dodge, so we do have some dodge rating on a few things. Not super helpful, but you'll have your 50% dodge while going through the battling. And that's it. I'm going to leave you guys with some gameplay.